Hello and welcome to Addiction Recovery Revolution. I'm your host, Debbie Nelson. I'm pleased to introduce Chelsie Stegemiller. Chelsie and I have met through the Alliance for Addiction Solutions. I feel like her story is so incredibly powerful. I asked her to be part of this summit, but also just part of sharing her powerful story. So welcome, Chelsie.
I'm glad to be here.
So Chelsie, I mean, you have a huge background with, you do extreme sports, obviously. You're now recovering from an accident you've always been involved in stuff. But I'd love to hear, just because I know I've heard your story and it's really powerful, and so many people watching this today wouldn't think that someone could be sitting in your place right now.
Yeah. So I grew up racing motocross. I raced dirt bikes since I was 8 years old, and throughout my journey in the sport, I had multiple injuries, multiple head injuries, and also developed a pretty bad bout of anxiety throughout my time riding dirt bikes. Eventually, due to all of the injuries and everything, I decided to retire and go to college, and I did that, and then I ended up working in the motocross industry, which I did for about 6 years, and then 1 year out of nowhere, I switch flipped, and all of a sudden...
I can't hear you.
Can't hear me?
No, there we go. Okay.
Sorry. So it was kind of a random out of the blue incident where something changed in my brain. I was unable to focus. I was having panic attacks throughout the day. I was going days on end without sleeping. And obviously over time that led to serious depression, just a generalized anxiety disorder that just wouldn't go away. And over the past 3 years, I've seen so many different doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, and I've learned a lot about, mental illness and the causes behind it. But it wasn't until I came across nutritional therapies, integrative medicine. I've been working with a naturopathic doctor, and I've also gone through a certification program for amino acid therapy, and I'm also completely changing my career and in graduate school for clinical nutrition for mental health. So I have had huge successes in, coming back to a place of groundedness and peace of mind after dealing with such an aggressive, what felt like never-ending beast that was going on inside my head.
You had debilitating anxiety and mental health issues. Had you done traditional treatment and then found this form of treatment?
Yeah, so I initially saw a psychiatrist. I was put on Valium, gabapentin, all sorts of different medications that I experienced just terrible side effects from. They all worked to an extent, and then over time they stopped working, and so my options were to start taking more, which scared the living crap out of me because I'm familiar with these medications and how easy it is to become addicted to them, and the thought of having to take more and then to have to take more and then to eventually depend on them just terrified me more than I was already scared. So I stopped taking that medication. Eventually, after seeing multiple doctors, I was highly advised to get on an SSRI, which I tried. And I tried that for about a year. And what I found is that it stabilized my panic attacks to an extent. My sleep was a little bit better, but it just took the highs out of life. It took the enjoyment out of my life, and I felt like I was missing out on so much. So after a year of being on that and checking the box, okay, I've tried that, I decided to stop taking it. And getting off of that SSRI was another one of the toughest things I've had to do in my life. And if it wasn't for nutrition and the background that I had to that point in integrative therapies and just my knowledge being in school, I wouldn't have been able to get off of them. I would have had to get back on the medication. So it's been a bit of a journey.
I think that's part of like an education process that I'm hopeful with the summit and with the alliance and what people are trying to promote out there with the academy is that nutrition helps produce the serotonins naturally that our body can produce. We just need to give it kind of the foundation. We need to give it the nutrients for it to be able to do that. And most people don't understand that because, you know, the propaganda of the 80s, which no longer exists now, was that, you know, an SSRI gives us what our body doesn't produce. Now, they can no longer say that, but during the 80s, and you were a product of the 80s, that was very much integrated, that, you know, Prozac was giving our body what it didn't produce, which in a way it's true, but it's not giving us the ability for our bodies to produce it naturally. So that's why it inherently will fail, because your body will become immune to it and you need more.
Yeah, and you know, the way SSRIs work is they're taking the little serotonin that you do have, and it's preventing the serotonin to be taken back up into the neuron. So it's keeping the neurotransmitters between the synapses of your neurons, and thus kind of exhausting your resources. So if you're taking an SSRI, it works to the extent to where you've exhausted all your resources and you have no serotonin left to even keep in between the synapses of the neurons in your brain. And so that's where it kind of becomes a challenge. And what I found in my case is, for some people, it's as simple as taking an amino acid such as 5-HTP or tryptophan to help to boost your serotonin levels. But what I found in my case, after being a vegan for, a few years, I had some serious vitamin and mineral deficiencies. I was iron deficient anemic. I had severely low levels of zinc. I had really low levels of vitamin D. I also found that I had a condition called pyroluria, where my body is excreting excessive amounts of B6 and zinc. And all of those things are cofactors in the production of serotonin. So if your body is depleted in such a profound way like that, your brain is not going to have what it needs to synthesize serotonin and to keep your neurotransmitters balanced. So for me, it's been kind of this game of detective I've been playing of, looking at the different systems of my body, my adrenal glands, my thyroid, my hormones, and trying to test everything to make sure that I have what I need and I'm not too depleted to make serotonin. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I've taken care of all of my deficiencies and I've come a long ways. I still have my bouts of anxiety, maybe a couple times a month, but I've definitely come a long ways in learning how to manage it naturally. And it's been life-changing for me because I don't have to deal with the side effects and I can live a relatively normal life, where I once thought that this condition was going to control me for the rest of my life.
So now you're going forward. You've become, I know because we're on the same track as far as learning through the academy, but you're also doing it on a higher level. You're going for a master's degree on integrative forms of therapy for people to be able to help with all different avenues. I mean, this is one. But you're a really big yoga advocate, right?
Yeah, so before I found the nutritional piece, which I think the biochemistry of your body is the foundation. And, therapies such as yoga and acupuncture, massage, and I've tried all of those, help to an extent. But if you aren't able to balance the biochemical systems of your body, it's tough for you to use those therapies alone to recover from something that is truly an imbalance or a serious deficiency. So yoga, meditation, I've taken a couple of years worth of training in that realm, and I've been working with some clients on a therapeutic level when it comes to yoga. And my hope is to also integrate my knowledge that I'm getting in clinical nutrition for mental health to really give people that I work with a well-rounded treatment when it comes to anxiety and mental health issues.
That's what I felt whenever I was introduced to this work. So I already did energy healing, so it was like I was and so that world as a whole very much accepts a lot of that. But I felt like this was the biochemical piece that's been missing within long-term recovery, whether it's mental health, addiction, whatever it is that a person is suffering from. If we don't deal with the biochemical, the rest of it's like a perfect marriage of both worlds. So there is a science, and it's very scientific, and you're very much, you're kind of like the female Bill Nye, the science guy, a version of the forefront of activism that's going on. You're kind of the next wave, you know, because I spoke with Carolyn Rubin, who was one of the founders, and we have people who now are wanting this to fan out. And really what we're talking about with addiction is that it's most of the time it's all driven mental health wise. Most people are, you know, seeking those things through self-medicating, through drugs, alcohol, other things. So this component is huge. Your story, I think, is amazing just because, you know, you do talk about, I can't believe how many people share their stories that, you know, I've shared before that I had someone that I was very close to in California, and he suffered horrible anxiety issues. So he detoxed off of his drugs of choice and, you know, was clean for a year and a half. But during that year and a half, he was coming out of his skin. I mean, because then all of a sudden how he had medicated himself, he no longer had. And so the options are kind of, well, you can take this and you can take this. But, you know, he really didn't have any answers as to how he could solve this problem for long term.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's kind of like there's all of these people then that are time bombs because the brain is going to want to level out itself. I mean, you're just wanting to fix yourself. So, you know, I think this is a wonderful, thank you for coming on and for sharing your story. People can get in touch with Chelsie. She does do nutritional counseling through amino acid therapy. And she's continuing on her journey to even have a higher level of education in integrative health. But is there a way that people can get in contact with you if they choose to have you coach them in this?
Yeah, so I think the best way right now is to reach out to me via email. My email address is Chelsie, Chelsie, Steg, Steg, @gmail.com. And I would love to help anyone because I've been there, and, you know, I've definitely been at my low point before, and I had experienced firsthand how easy it is to get to a place where you feel helpless, where it's easy to, you know, stumble into these addictions, whether it's to medications, drugs, alcohol. It's easy, and it's scary, and I have dedicated my life to learning more about this field so that I can help others to find answers quicker than I was able to.
Well, I think you're eons beyond, obviously. I mean, I'm 50 years old, and I feel like I've found this wonderful key that helps me, and I'm able to then help other people with it. But I think that I can't wait to see you blow up with what you're going to bring the next generation of integrative health. So, but thank you for taking the time to be on Addiction Recovery Revolution, and anyone wishing to be in contact with Chelsie, we'll put her link for her information, so then that way there's a way that you could be in contact. She can coach people via Zoom, like what we're doing right now, FaceTime, so it's not relative that you have to necessarily be in the same vicinity, although you're in Salt Lake, aren't you?
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, yes.
Yeah, she's a big snowboarder and a huge mountain person. She's up mountain biking all the time. I know every time I see her post. So, but thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you, Chelsie.
Thank you for having me.